Santa Cruz Mountains, by definition nowadays, is on the ocean side, it's an elevation of above 400 feet. On the Santa Clara Valley and the bay side, it's an elevation above 800 feet. And to the north, it's Highway 92. In the south, it's Hecker Pass Highway. Wine producing started in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the 1850s. And it was in the 80s and the 90s that it reached its peak. And through competitions conducted by the state in Sacramento and through competitions in Europe, and wines from Santa Cruz Mountains were judged as the best available from the United States. After the turn of the last century and approaching Prohibition, the wine industry died out in the Santa Cruz Mountains. At that time, there were probably 5,000 to 6,000 acres of grapes in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And at that time, 100 years ago, the farmers changed over from grapes to orchards, pears, prunes, apples, cherries. And in fact, this piece of land 100 years ago was a vineyard, and it changed over. Again, the owners and the operators changed over to fruit trees. It was pears and prunes and cherries. When I found the property in the early 70s, 72 actually, it was an abandoned orchard. There were a number of reasons why it died out here. Part of it was Prohibition, but part of it was also the mechanization of farming. For example, the first tractors could only operate in the valley floor, so it was more efficient to operate the vineyards down there with the new tractors. The tractors could not come up in the hills. And then finally, in the 50s, why the wine industry started to come back to the Santa Cruz Mountains. For example, in the Santa Cruz Mountain Wine Growers Association was first formed, and the appellation was first formed in the mid-70s. And there were probably a dozen wineries at that time. And then in 79, when Silver Mountain joined, I think we were number 19. I wanted to show you a little bit about the trellis system that we have here. The trellis system has been here about 4 or 5 years, and the vineyard was planted 20 some odd years ago. This row, if you look down, you can see all the canes are held by wires straight up, and it's a single row, and we call this a vertical trellis. The ones on either side are called a lyre system. And you'll see this is a dual or 2 rows. If you look down, you'll see there's a double row. For example, there's a row of canes up on each side with an opening in the middle. Both trellis systems are for the purpose of holding the canes straight up. So we don't have any, what it used to be, we call the California sprawl, where canes just went up a little bit and then just flopped anywhere they want to. By keeping the canes and the leaves straight up, all the fruit is in this lower 8 to 10 inches above the cordon. The cordon is the arm that comes out of the trunk and stays. That's a permanent part, and the new canes every year come up out of the cordon. Now, this week we're going to start doing what we call leaf pulling. We're going to pull all these leaves off of here in the fruiting zone and exposing the fruit. And the reason that we want the fruit exposed for several reasons. We'll do it on both sides. Now, one thing, powdery mildew is one of the biggest problems that we deal with here in growing grapes. So, to prevent powdery mildew, if we can take the leaves off and expose the fruit to the air and the sun, then we have less moisture. The clone of Chardonnay that we have is called the Mount Eden clone, and it is famous for having very small bunches, and the berries are even smaller than average Chardonnay. And the reason that we picked the Mount Eden clone is because with those smaller berries, you get a greater surface to volume ratio. And the reason we want that is because the flavor comes from the skins of the grapes. And the color does also, especially in the red wines. Once a year, we have a festival. It is based on the solstice. We have 2 different musical groups on the stage. We have a number of activities for guests. We have a guest chef cooking up all sorts of delectable delights.
To start, we have a 3-cheese pesto torta with fresh baked crostinis.
We also have almost 20 artists and vendors showing and selling artwork of all sorts.